Hello, I'm Tim Harris. This is Julie Harris, and this is Real Estate Coaching Radio.
That's right. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any future episodes. Thanks again for popping by. Hit that like button, and don't forget to leave your comments and questions so we can get right back with you.
We will. Thank you for continuing to make our podcast, Real Estate Coaching Radio, the #1 listened to podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. And let us know what you think about this video. Leave your comments below. Thank you.
Welcome back. So I've got a question for all of you. Do you feel out of control or burned out? Do you ever feel that way? Well, when you listen to today's podcast, we're going to be giving you a 7-step solution to really defeat those emotional feelings when they occur in your life.
That's right. Do you sometimes feel like your business is running you ragged? Is your time management and scheduling out of control? Are you exhausted but don't have enough to show for it? Well, you might need a checkup from the neck up, a hard look at your energy management, a reset of your mindset. You've got deals yet to do this year and only so much time to get them done, so it's time to get you back on track. Here's a secret. Time management, the least sexy term in ever, right? Time management, isn't really time management, it's energy management. So point number 1, realize that your energy is a resource. Treat it as you do food and water. You'd never go without renewing your food or water, right? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, even hormones can impact your energy levels. So how aware are you of your personal energy management?
It's interesting to consider, be honest with yourself. I mean, maybe is where we should be, confronting most of you. How effective, how many hours a day are you truly effective? Like how many hours a day do you feel really like you've got, Julie mentioned hormones, but you've got your emotions in a heightened state. You've got your hormones are imbalanced. You really are in a real place to receive the many blessings that life has to offer. How many hours a day are you actually in that state versus maybe not running in a state of peak performance? For most people, it's maybe an hour a day. That's the truth. Most people, maybe an hour or 2 a day. Now you can work with your energy management, as Julie just said, to have that last a longer period of time more consistently. But also what you really want to get to is the point where you can decide when you're going to feel at that heightened state of emotional, mental, and maybe even spiritual willingness to accept what life has to give. And when you're in that, when you have that ability to decide when you're going to feel that way, that's truly when you're going to start getting a true sense of control. And it's something you can learn, but you have to start out with the idea of the acknowledgement that right now, probably if you're lucky, you operate at the highest level for maybe an hour or 2 a day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can work on that and build it up. But, all of this, a lot of today's podcast is going to come down to being present and observing yourself.
So when do you feel like that? When do you feel the most effective, the most, really aware, awake, and, connected? When is that for you?
Well, I have worked on this, as have you. And, we have podcasts to do and coaching calls and coaches with coaches and all these things we have to do. So I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, I am most productive, most focused with the most energy between about 10 a.m. and 2 to 3 p.m. at the most.
So for me, it's right when I get up, really. And basically, I have to do whatever my heavy lift is of the day, whatever, if I have something to write or I have a business plan to work on or I have some, higher level, calls or whatever, the stuff that requires my highest state of attentiveness and effectiveness, I have to put those first things in the morning.
Absolutely.
And the more boilerplate, boring things, I'm going to put off to the, second part of the day. Like, for example, I don't need to have all my cylinders firing to work out and swing kettlebells.
Right.
I can,
You still do it, but you don't have to be as focused as, say, a really important Zoom call with somebody.
Or, coaching calls, right? So if you're
course.
doing coaching calls and someone's paying you a lot of money and you're, wanting to make it so they get maximum value from that coaching call, I will time my coaching calls and, like I said, my heavy lift activities to coincide when I already know I'm naturally going to be have higher states of energy and focus. Now, as you get older, that window gets smaller. So you've got to be really aware that you can positively affect, like I was saying a second ago, you can positively affect the duration of feeling that way, and it really does come down to the things we're going to share with you today.
That's right. But all of that takes conscious awareness, doesn't it? So point number 2, don't expect to be able to simply conjure up your best energy and focus just by willing it into existence. You can't will yourself to not need water, can you? Have systems in place to maximize your productivity. Working out, having a regular wake-up time, and eating nutritionally is a good starting point. For example, many studies have shown that when you think you're tired, depressed, or getting sick, you're probably just dehydrated. So up your water intake and experience the difference that just one little change can make for you.
So like most people, I get usually a little groggy around 2:30. And what I discovered was if I start drinking more water throughout the day, but really around 12:30, then I don't get tired around 2:30.
Yes, but you had to think of it before it actually hit you.
Well, I had to come to the realization it wasn't just a function of getting older. I mean, that's what happens, especially as you get older, listeners, as a lot of you know, is that you start to rationalize not being as efficient, not being as awake and aware, and not being as alive feeling as you did when you were younger. But it really does come down to some very basic things. You're still mentally able, and this is worth mentioning, it's not part of your notes, that most people don't accomplish their highest levels of success until they're in their 50s. Now, depending on what career you're in, you actually might have peak performance at a much earlier age. For example, if you're a professional athlete, you're not going to have a career much past maybe your early 30s, depending on what your path is. But selling real estate, you have a career that can last decades and can last, frankly, well into your 60s and your 70s and even your 80s because of the fact that you're not, real estate is not like, say, for example, playing, football,
Right.
So your peak performance, depending on your career path, might actually not even be happening until you're in your 50s or your 60s, maybe even older than that. So it's kind of fascinating to take all these things in consideration. So don't rationalize your lack of effectiveness just basically purely on your age.
Well put. Okay, point number 3. Speaking of your effectiveness, your brain takes up 5% of your body, but uses 20% of your body's resources. So feed your brain. 60% of your brain is made of fat. Omega-3 from supplements or fish like salmon is going to boost your brain's functionality. And guess what? Caffeine, you'll be glad to hear this. Caffeine is also recommended. It's been proven to not just boost your mood, but to actually block the chemicals which cause tiredness. Concentration for longer periods of time results from feeding your brain the right things. Dark chocolate, oranges, eggs, that are all recommended by nutritionists. So when you snack, choose wisely. And we see this with our daughter, right? But I think it's even more important as adults because especially real estate professionals, what do they snack on? Whatever's convenient, whatever they can get their hands on, right?
Well, I can tell you for sure, after like you know this as well as I do.
Yeah.
So after 2 or 3, maybe 4 coaching calls in a row, right?
Yeah.
The mental energy it takes to do those at a high level is extraordinary compared to basically everything else in our lives.
5,000% agree.
And so like sometimes Julie and I batch all these podcasts and we'll do them all on Monday. So we'll take, 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours to do all of our podcasts. Trust me when I tell you at the end of that, we are pretty much exhausted.
Yes.
Doing a great podcast interview is the same way. I mean, to be fully engaged and locked in, it's not like, you're physically moving 500-pound rocks, right? It's your brain using all of your energy. So don't discount the impact of long or even short periods of really intense thinking. So for example, if you're doing, let's say, for example, you're learning how to proactively lead generate. Don't expect, if you're starting that new activity, centers of influence and past clients, or maybe FSBOs are expired or something like that. Don't expect that not to be, mentally and by the way, physically exhausting. It's part of the process.
That's normal. Okay. So point number 4, know what your default is when you've screwed up the first 3 things we've already talked about. By powering through or telling yourself, I don't need to take a break, do you tend to get snippy or distracted? That's your early warning sign that your brain is starving. Some of you change personality styles. Refer to agentdisc.com for my DISC personality style people. When you're hangry or stressed or tired, you can actually change personalities. That probably isn't working for you. So take a breath before you make a mistake that you'll regret later.
I don't think Agent DISC works anymore. Did you
It
test
does.
that? Oh, does it really?
It does.
Damn, we're better than we thought.
It's actually part of the beginning of our coaching program too.
Yeah, I knew that. That's what I was
but it
referring
works.
to.
I checked.
Right. So by the way, you guys can join Premier Coaching since we're checking each other right now. And just click on the link in the show description below or just go to premiercoaching.com. And then you can join Premier Coaching for free. We talk about it every day. Literally thousands of you join, so you know what an amazing value that is. But it does include a daily semi-private coaching call that all of you should be embracing. It really does. As you're reading through your points, I'm thinking about all this. There's like little energy hacks that you can do throughout the day,
Sure.
but nothing is going to shortcut like the importance of water and basic nutrition,
Sleep.
Simple things. And the whole powering through thing, I have a feeling when you were writing that point, you were thinking of me. You're smiling. Yeah. Cause that was always my approach. And when you're younger, you can get away with it.
Much more. You remember when the first time we came back from Europe,
Yeah.
And we were 30 something. I think we were probably mid to late 30s. And you and I were like, we would always go on our 6 mile walks. And we're like, we're fine. Jet lag. Who believes in that?
Well, we're in Italy for like a month, basically.
Yeah.
And I'll tell the rest of the story
Sure.
because I remember, I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
And
But that was powering through. We were trying.
right. And we went on a 5 month, this walk that we'd do. I mean, Julie and I are prolific walkers, right? And we'd do this walk. It was 5 miles one way, 5 miles the other, or something like that. Yeah. And we used to do that on a regular basis, and it was a great thing. So when we got back from Italy, we maybe took a day or two, and then we decided, well, it's time for us to go on a walk. We feel great. I remember coming back from the walk, and about halfway through, and I literally started to shut down, and I couldn't control it. Like, I basically was walking and I passed out.
It's like a brick wall hit you.
I didn't pass out like I, hit the ground, but I remember like I just completely system failed right there as we were walking. And then I had to sit down and I felt this wave of unbelievable tiredness. Well, that was my brain shutting down saying, nope, guess what, buddy?
You're done.
You're done.
You can't power through.
No. And yeah. So that was the thing is you got to take into consideration. And it's like I was talking about with our Zoe, our daughter the other day. I was saying, Zoe, what do you think you can go the longest without? Food, sleep, or water? Right? And you don't realize this, listeners, but you can actually go the longest without food or sleep. You can't go that long. I'm sorry, without food or water. You can't go that long without sleep. Otherwise, you go crazy.
Yes, there's been a lot of studies on that, actually. And the one that I remember the most was, and this came out a couple of years ago, one of the facts hit me the most that getting 6 hours or less, I think was the criteria. 6 hours or less sleep, your focus rated the same as being like completely inebriated.
Well, since we're talking about sleep, I actually heard this the other day, that the levels of everything you just said, but also fertility.
Yeah.
Fertility is tied to sleep.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Your ability, and men, their testosterone levels is tied to sleep.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. And here's this, Julie and I we're going to nerd out on you, but they're actually, there's no scientific conclusion as to why the human brain needs so much sleep. Nobody knows why we need so much sleep. Isn't that amazing?
It is. I can tell you the other time I remember is when Zoe was a newborn and I had been sleep deprived for like the first 2 weeks. I will never forget thinking to myself, how can I crave sleep as much as sometimes I feel like craving some favorite food or something? Like It was so intense, the craving for sleep, and I couldn't concentrate. So anyway, I am sure all of our listeners have their own sleep deprivation stories.
But it does it's in perfect alignment with what we're talking about. Because sometimes if you're not as effective, if you're not able to, if you're not able to basically lock into accomplishment of goals, if you don't feel as motivated, if you feel depressed, 99% of the time, there's nothing really wrong with you.
Right.
It's just these basic things that you can completely be in control of. Your nutrition, your water intake, and obviously sleep.
Well, that's right. And if you continue to ignore it, it's not going to get any better and you can really get stuck in a rut.
Well, and just move past this whole ego thing of I'll sleep when I'm dead and all these other dumb things that people say. Well, you're going to be dead a lot sooner than you'd otherwise imagine if you don't get enough sleep.
You don't figure it out. Okay. Point number 5, manage your own energy resources, but also be aware of what's happening with your clients, your prospects, your kids, your spouse. Are they hangry? Is their brain hangry? Is yours? Be present not just with yourself, but be situationally aware of others too. Did you just show 4 homes to your buyers and then try to close them to write a contract when they haven't eaten for 8 hours, for example? Are you going on a listing appointment after eating nothing but junk food, no water, and just don't feel right? I have an example I wrote down from a recent coaching call. I had a very competent coaching client recently lose a competitive listing appointment that she should have taken. Historically, she takes almost 10 out of 10.
Are we going to say who this is?
I think that it was Jeannie in Phoenix.
Okay.
Sorry, Jeannie, if it wasn't you. Because it's been a couple months. Her comment was that she knew why she wasn't at her best. She was too hot, wearing the wrong outfit, and was hungry the entire time. She couldn't concentrate, was impatient, and didn't give the prospect the right level of attention. Thus, she lost the listing and along with it about a $20,000 commission. As a result, because, in coaching we talk about this stuff, As a result, she reorganized her closet with her top 5 listing appointments for different types of weather and set alarms to eat regularly.
Now, again, this all goes back to if you're feeling burned out or out of control, you're realizing that a lot of the reasons that you feel burned out or out of control do come back to these very basic things that we underestimate the importance of those things.
That's right, especially in real estate. A lot of you guys have some of you, it might be you, hopefully not, but a lot of you have run into agents where it's like a badge of honor. They come in, I never forget going to a closing, roundtable closings, both agents there, all of your clients. And we were all waiting on the agent on the other side. Her name was Wendy. And she came in like a tornado had hit her. She had this long, beautiful hair, but she was all disheveled and, like her file folder was falling apart. But the way that she approached it was, I've been so busy. She said this coming into the closing, right? I'm just so busy. I'm so slammed. I haven't eaten in 2 days or whatever, like blah, blah, blah. But I will never forget seeing the look on her client's faces when she said that. Like they were disappointed. They were not impressed by her wearing it as a badge of honor that she was so busy that she didn't have time to eat and she was late to the appointment, right? Okay, so don't let that be you. Point number 6, know what your most naturally energetic and brain-focused times of day are and do your most important things at those times. Most people get progressively less focused and less effective as their day gets later and later. Do the hardest things first when you're most focused versus putting them off until they either don't get done at all or get done poorly. Lead generation and lead follow-up are the most obvious things that you should conquer when you're at peak focus.
And there's so in conclusion of point number 6, most of you are going to be the most effective really in the morning. Julie's a little bit later morning, but you still get the idea. Why? It's because your body's been rested. It's because your hormones are imbalanced. When you study all this stuff, you'll realize that is 100% when most people are going to be able to do what they don't want to do when they don't want to do it at the highest level is first thing in the morning. I realize that doesn't sound like a very great way to start the day, but the truth is when you see yourself doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level and you're effective because you're timing the activity along with your peak energy of the day, that's going to give you energy to carry you throughout the rest of the day because you'll know you will have done that particular day something that you would have rather not have done, but you'll have done it at a high level. And I'm talking about maybe it's making a prospecting call. Maybe it's calling that cranky seller for a price change. But that's the ultimate hack to basically having more continuous flows of energy throughout the day because you'll know you have done what you wanted to do the least to the first thing. And it is liberating versus carrying around the burden of not having done what you didn't want to do for the rest of the day. Because if you didn't do, for example, that call to that cranky seller in the morning, you're not going to do it in the evening. And you're going to ruin the entire day thinking about having to make that call to that particular person or whatever it is that you're procrastinating. So at the end of the day, pun intended, do what matters most first when you're actually most able to do it at a high level. And your life and your business is always going to come down to doing maybe 3 to 5 things at the highest level every single day. So our strongest suggestion for all of you is do those things in the morning. Those are going to be, for example, making the number of proactive lead generation, really prospecting in a lot of cases, contacts first thing in the morning, whatever your real estate treasure map has dictated that you need to make. Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 3, it doesn't matter. Do some sort of physical activity, a simple 2-mile walk a day, just a walk, not a walk where you're about to pass out, but a walk where it's a little bit labored breathing. That is so perfect for your body and your mind long-term. The accumulation effect from that activity alone will be extraordinary. Do make a point of being overt with your appreciation, especially with the people that you love. Your family members, tell them if you don't have a family and you have a cat, tell your cat every day that you love your cat. You guys get the point? Showing over appreciation every day matters. Showing if you're religious, then you probably want to pray in the morning. I don't need to tell you that. Meditate in the morning. Do things. There's 3 to 5 things that if you do those things every single day at the highest level, you're going to have the accumulation effect work to your benefit. And over time, you'll be absolutely astonished by what you've been able to accomplish because you did those things first. Staggering them throughout the day, especially now that hopefully you're recognizing your energy levels and your effectiveness levels are inconsistent. That's probably a big reason why you're feeling burned out. That's probably a big reason why you're feeling out of control.
Absolutely. And by the way, cranky sellers don't get less cranky when you don't call them. They're not going away.
But here's the other thing. Those cranky sellers are going to be crankier because you're now contacting them when they're not at peak versions of themselves. They're going to be at their peak version of themselves, more, receptive to, mentally and emotionally digesting maybe adverse information that you need to tell them in the morning than they are going to be in the evening. You guys get it?
100%.
Everyone, no matter what their age is, feels burned out towards the end of the day. That's the reason we all need 8 hours of sleep.
Because you've done some stuff during the day, right? Okay, so point number 7, actively practice and improve upon the skills that you need most versus staying stuck in habits that aren't working for you or aren't working fast enough for you. For example, I talked about this on a previous pod. A recent study of the habits of world-ranked athletes, it was proven that the best of the best practice what they're not good at versus the next rung down who would practice over and over and over what they already knew how to execute. Figure skaters who were Olympic medalists were observed to be practicing harder and harder jumps and maneuvers versus non-medalists who were good at only a few key moves. So practice the things that you need help on. And again, practice them in the part of the day that you're most focused and most effective.
And as we talked about in that previous podcast, the beautiful thing about real estate is there's not really that many things you have to be really good at.
Right.
Proactive lead generation. I'm not doing these in the right order. Well, actually I will. Proactive lead generation, pre-qualifying, presenting, negotiating, and closing. And Julie's going to say definitely furiously fast lead follow-up. Those are really the only things that you have to get really, really, really good at in real estate. And the most important thing truly is the proactive lead generation.
That's it.
When you can generate lots of leads, it's one thing to generate leads. A lot of you guys are generating a lot of, paid leads through funnels and internet marketing and whatnot. But if you're not calling those leads and you're not pre-qualifying them, then you're kind of wasting your time and your energy, aren't you? So when you're good at proactive lead generation, pre-qualifying, presenting, negotiating, closing and lead follow-up, you get good at those activities, I will give you permission to be bad at everything else in real estate, because everything else in real estate either doesn't matter as much or doesn't matter and can be easily delegated. So do keep those functions in mind. If you have to choose what you're going to be really, really good at, they are. Julie Harris, number 1.
Well, here's how I have them memorized, and our coaching clients have them memorized, and the coaches. Think chronologically, right? None of the rest of the list happens if you don't do number 1. That's proactive lead generation. Generate the lead in the first place. Furiously fast lead follow-up. You've generated leads, but they're sitting in your voicemail. It doesn't matter.
Or if you were able to generate the lead through proactive lead generation, you were able to set the appointment, you go immediately to the pre-qualifying and right to you setting the appointment. So don't think the point of lead generating is to create a lead that you have to follow up on. Right. So do realize that your point when you're proactively lead generating is to pre-qualify and set an appointment, not create a lead that you're going to follow up on.
To actually speak with the prospect as quickly as possible with the fewest things in between you and the appointment. So then that leads to pre-qualifying. Pre-qualifying leads to a listing presentation or a buyer presentation. So that's the presenting part. And then closing. Closing can mean asking for the business, buyer presentation, listing presentation.
Getting the buyer agency contract signed, getting the listing contract signed.
Closing, right?
Right.
And then, of course, being able to negotiate when necessary. Lather, rinse, repeat. So I think of them chronologically: generate the lead, pre-qualify, present, negotiate, close, lather, rinse, repeat.
That's right. Those are the things you have to get really good at.
And I would add to that, if you want to think of it in the converse way, not getting good at those is the recipe to train wreck your business. Working on everything that's not that will drive you in. The worst thing is to get out of the business carrying a whole crap ton of credit card debt of speculative things that didn't work out. So not only are you out of the business, but you're actually in a financial hole that was worse than when you got into the business.
That's right. And so with your, actually Julie's touching on something else too. If a lot of you, if you are feeling burned out or out of control, it's maybe because frankly, air quote, the profits you've been following are not leading to profits. So the PHROPHET isn't leading to the profit, PROFIT. False profits lead to no profit. I was spell checking Julie. She got it right. So the moral of the story is sometimes you guys will be frustrated with yourselves because what you've been doing in your business primarily to lead generate isn't actually generating the leads that you need to actually make money. And so what you're doing is you're blaming yourself for that particular, shiny object not working for you, you're saying, well, I must not be good enough. There must be something wrong with me. I've made a bunch of YouTube videos like so-and-so told me, but now they're not actually generating the leads that those people claim they would generate. Maybe it's because I'm ugly. Maybe it's because I'm not good at, no, maybe it's because you actually followed a false prophet. Actually, the activity that they were, preaching you for you to do maybe had value, but you didn't put it the value, like you didn't do it in the right order. So for example, the proactive lead generation has to be the first activity you master. And if you want to do the passive lead generation, things like that, marketing and advertising, do that after you've learned how to do the proactive lead generation. Most of the agents that are struggling in this business, who are feeling burned out and out of control to stay on topic, are the ones that do not have an abundance of leads because they have not learned how to proactively lead generate, pre-qualify, and obviously all the other activities. That is something that you can control, like your water intake, like how much sleep you get, like all the rest of it.
Well, if you want control, look at the things that you can control. You can control your lead generation, just like you can control your water intake, what you're eating regularly, and your sleep. You can.
And sometimes, and I'm not going to talk about, Julie's going to give me the stink eye here in a second. Every time we talk about anything that even remotely resembles anything outside of our wheelhouse, we get criticism. So I'm going to be very sensitive of that. She's not.
Step away from the keyboard.
Okay. Well, So here's the thought. Sometimes it is a great idea. Well, you should be doing this annually to go and have like a blood panel done. And the blood panel, not just for all the usual things, but look at your hormone balance. Don't worry, you overly sensitive listeners. I'm not going to talk about HRT or anything like that. But you should look into basically, what's going on with your hormones, because there is a lot of, FDA approved science that's out there that can allow you to get your hormones in balance. But you got to start out with your overall physicality, your weight and your health, or your weight and your sleep and your water and your the food you're eating and things like that. Because a lot of the things that we write off as getting older, I'll give you guys an example. I'll never forget. So Julie and I are from Columbus, Ohio. And when you're in Columbus, Ohio, generally speaking, you basically are going to stay around the Midwest pretty much your entire life. At least that was our experience. Now, we didn't come from the affluent area of town, but the moral of the story is that we are surrounded by people, generally speaking, that looked the same, acted the same, spoke the same at the same stages of their lives. Would you say that's true?
Yeah.
Okay. That's true for most of the country too.
Sure.
I'll never forget the first time you and I went out to Southern California. Mm-hmm. And I remember we were walking in Laguna Beach.
Yes.
And I remember we were going on a long walk. Uh-huh. And I remember seeing ahead of us, there was like this little cadre of like very beautiful, almost model-like women. Mm-hmm. And not that, you obviously are a beautiful model-like woman too, right? And I remember seeing these women ahead of us, and we were walking faster than they were, and we were catching up to them. And I thought you and I were about to, pass some girls in their 20s. Nope. These ladies were probably at least in their 60s.
Yeah. What I remember is a dude roller skating by with his shirt off, with a great tan, looking fantastic. And I'm thinking to myself, that dude has got to be like 70.
Well, why are we telling you this other than just to make you laugh? It's because what you'll realize if you do more traveling and expose yourself to more ways that different people in different parts of the country, let alone the world, live, you're going to realize actually that just because you're 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 doesn't mean that you have to act like you're, over the hill. Because there's 100% medical supporting what I'm saying. There are things you can do in your body. There's things you can do with your behavior
that are in your control.
That are in your control. So like where Julie and I come from, if you're in I'd say, you can argue with me on this point, okay? But I'll say in your 50s, where we're from, you're pretty much kind of, you're almost over the hill basically, right?
Yeah, I'd say that here, where we are now in the
Murphy,
South as well.
Yeah, that's true. But in other parts of the world, in other parts of the country, that's not true at all.
Well, I noticed in Italy that things were different like that as well.
Yeah.
People were out more. They were more active. The other thing I noticed that maybe is related to this topic was they weren't on their cell phones all the time.
Yeah.
Even, teenagers were out at the park, not on their phones. There's all these different things. So your job is to adopt and adapt the things that improve your lifestyle, improve your physicality, improve your mental state, and lose the things that are working against you. I can tell you one of the most significant things I've seen amongst friends and us and coaching clients is something as simple as not having different rules for every day. Like get up at the same time every day. I have the inability really to sleep in, even on a weekend. Get up at the same time every day. Try to go to bed at the same time every day.
Be habitual.
Be habitual. You can regulate your sleep cycles and I think that makes you have to be conscious. Those of you who have kids that have to get to school, it makes it a lot easier on you because you have to get up early. But I think it makes a big difference. And not having all these different rules for different circumstances in life, just making things more simple. You and I had a resolution at the beginning of the year: less things, not more things, simplicity, not complexity. And I think that that's something that has been a good North Star for us.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's because ultimately there's too many threat vectors. The more complicated, really, this is, you and I are meandering, but it's okay. Somebody out there is really going to appreciate this.
Hopefully.
The more complicated anything is, the less likely it is to work.
That's true.
You got to get back to first principles when you're thinking through anything you want to accomplish, right? So if you look at, for example, Julie just mentioned a morning routine. If your morning routine is, going to have a lot of different layers of complexity, it's going to fail. It's baked in. If you're trying to create a way to lead generate, and this is one of the reasons that so many of you guys struggle, really, I mean, it's just insane. I'll share with you guys a story. I'm talking with someone who used to, it's failed, have a coaching company that was teaching agents how to generate through paid, media, through pay-per-click, through all that stuff, right? He'd create funnels. He would create all kinds of different things. And their coaching and training company failed. Why? Because their users actually weren't making money and the idea failed. And I remember asking him, don't you think ultimately the reason that your coaching clients weren't getting a result and thus your business wasn't actually succeeding? I didn't say it like this. I was much more diplomatic, but the point was still the same, was because what you were trying to sell to them was too complicated for them to actually implement with any consistency. And he said, absolutely. I was shocked that he was that honest. But that is the truth. So the more complicated anything is, the more steps and clicks and funnels and this working and that working something is, it's going to fail. So you want to look for simplicity in your life. That's the reason Julie and you guys listen to our podcast for a long time. We're locked into that way of thinking. But that's the reason we say you're a really high achieving human is going to have figured out what the 3 to 5 things are that they need to be doing every day, ideally in the morning, and doing those things every single day. Here's what it gives you a sense of: massive accomplishment and success. It gives you a sense of every single day, whether you took a listing or had a buyer agency contract signed or got paid or whatever, you're going to feel that you did what you were supposed to do that particular day. Okay, you may have had every single thing work against you, but guess what? You got in your 30-minute workout. You feel really good, don't you? You guys get the point? And so that's how you build long-term momentum. That's how you do have to start out by doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. But then over time, people will say it's, forming new habits, and it is. But you essentially start making those things habitual, and you don't even have to think about doing them anymore. They just naturally happen. And when you don't do one of those 3 to 5 things, you're in an emotional quagmire. I mean, Julie and I, we had it was last week, and it was, we had a bunch of Zooms and a bunch of this and the other thing. So it was just like locked in day. And we didn't get our exercise in the morning because we had a bunch of people that wanted to talk to us that were in different time zones and stuff. It was crazy. But you know what we did? It was dark and we still did our workout because we did not want a day to go by. And we did what we normally worked out. We didn't give ourselves a break because we didn't want a day to go by where we didn't actually do what we were supposed to do, because the agreement that we have is if we don't, and we haven't worked out yet today, by the way, the agreement that we have is if we don't do our daily workout, as an example, 5 days of the week, and it's going to be at least 30 minutes in the gym doing what we don't want to do and we don't want to do at the highest level. It's going to be at least a 30-minute walk, sometimes a 2-hour walk, just depending where we are. We're going to have to do it on Saturday, right? So that's another thing we teach our coaching clients. If you have, as part of your real estate treasure map, to make 5 proactive lead generation contacts a day, right? And you didn't do those 5 a day and you missed a day, so you only did 20 at the end of the week, not 25. Guess what you're doing Saturday morning? That's how you will get consistent results over a long period of time. And it won't be tied to your emotions. It won't be tied to how you feel. It won't be tied to what's going on in the news. Because you're going to be the person what was that Olympic swimmer uses? Michael Phelps, right? I remember, you guys might remember this too, it was on 60 Minutes. Michael Phelps would get up every morning. It was like 3:30 or 4:30 in the morning. And 60 Minutes was trailing along as he went on this routine. The first place he stopped some restaurant, and he had an enormous amount of, all
like
kinds
5,000 calories.
Do you
or
remember?
Something? Yeah.
Yeah. And he was still like not an ounce of fat on. Right. And then he'd he'd jump in the freaking pool, and the pool was dark. They didn't turn on the damn lights. His coach would be waiting for him every single morning. The water was cold. The whole thing it looked like one of Dante's levels of hell, honestly,
Seriously.
minus the endless pancakes he had.
And he did it for like 6 hours straight or something.
Yeah, and he did it over and over
Every day.
and over every day. His coach sitting there watching him, going back and forth. And he's like, I hate it. I don't like it at all.
He's doing what he didn't want to do when he didn't want to do it.
And
At a high level, obviously.
And that's what there's aspects of it. Like a lot of people fool themselves into thinking, well, if I'm not passionate about it, then it's not for me. Successful fall. You do what you're passionate about and the successful follow. Well, what if what you're really passionate about is basket weaving? I mean, and what if on the other side of basket weaving, there's not a bunch of, money, because there's not a lot of people that want to buy your basket, isn't it? I mean, aren't there obvious exceptions to that rule? Well, of course there are. So where the real long-term levels of success come in is not looking for those moments of feeling emotionally, like when you're feeling passionate, it's like an emotional, pick me up. It's like a heightened state. If the only time that you're going to really do what you don't want to do and you don't want to do at the highest levels when you feel that heightened emotional state, you're never going to do anything. Nope. So you got to work past the belief that you have to have that emotional state in order to accomplish things at a high level.
So here's the thing that I see very frequently with agents who are trying to increase the number of people they're talking to, make their contacts better, working on their scripts, etc. But because it's a little bit hard, here's the thing. That discipline that you're talking about of Michael Phelps in the pool, and you like Formula One, I'll never forget I can't remember which driver it was, but the exercise was close your eyes and draw whichever track it was. Mm-hmm. And they were so extremely accurate without just like right now, draw the track. There's no screen in front of you. There's no map. Just draw the track. That's because of the repetitious boredom that they had gone through of being committed to doing what they didn't want to do when they didn't want to do it at the highest level over and over and over. The issue in real estate is if you don't do anything today, you don't see the negative results until 30, 60, 90 days down the road. You don't have an immediate punishment, right?
Well, the opposite is true too, right? So the activities that you do today, the proactive contacts, the appointments you set, all that, that's not going to pay you right away. It's going to pay you 60 to 90 days from now.
If you do it.
Or 180 days from now, depending on your market, if you do it. So if you don't have money now, the butt you need to be kicking is the butt of you 60, 90 days ago, or maybe 180 days ago, because you decided not to do what you didn't want to do when you didn't want to do it at the highest level. So if the way you lock in consistent cash flow, guys, is doing those activities every single day, and then the accumulation effect after a day, 2 days, 3 weeks, 5 months, 5 years is extraordinary.
But here's the issue. They have to stop making it optional.
Yes.
You have to take it as seriously as you do a listing appointment.
Even when you don't feel like it, your feelings will
Especially when you don't feel like it.
Yeah, right. Your feelings will betray you. They will. Because most times your feelings are going to tell you to avoid things that make you uncomfortable.
That's right. I had a coaching client tell one of the coaches last week that he was embarrassed and beating himself up and needed help with the following. I know now, after doing the treasure map, what I need to do, and I know what I've committed to doing. His example was 10 contacts to his past client to his database using the script, etc. But here's the problem. I keep telling myself that I have something more important to do in the morning and I'll do it in the afternoon. But I never actually do it in the afternoon. So I say I'm going to do it the next day, but then I don't do it the next day, and then I feel so bad about it that I can't get back on track by the end of the week.
And years
And then
pass.
I lost an entire week.
Well, not just that. You lost months and years, and then you basically have written yourself off.
It ends up not done at all.
Yeah, so if you're listening to us right now, and some of you are going to be 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and so forth, years old, and you're listening, you're saying, okay, that really hurt what Julie just said, but that's definitely me. Guess what? You still got time to do something about it.
That's right. Starting now.
You know how I know? Because you're alive.
And you're listening to this podcast.
Right. So maybe there's some stars aligning for you right now. It's time for you to be proactive and actually take action on some of these things because you innately know what we're saying is true. Now, here's a little interesting thing. Our goal is never to motivate you guys because we think, frankly, people that are motivational speakers are basically snake oil salesmen. For the most part, God bless them. There's a place for them, I suppose, but that's not our style. It's the easy button. Motivating people is far easier than educating them, and with that education, giving them the confidence to get into action, right? I want you to think about what I just said. Hopefully from listening to today's podcast, you actually, as a byproduct, you're feeling motivated because we've given you the items to get into action. One of the first things all of you should be doing is 100% joining Premier Coaching if you have not done so, because you're going to need to change your environment. You're going to need to surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that are also on the path to achieving greater things in their lives. I was giving you the example of when Julie and I were going on these walks and we saw, people that were where we're from were considered over the hill, and here they were as vibrant and alive as possible. That's called your environment. And sometimes just taking a trip like we did will change your life forever. So consider that. And guys, listen, as long as you're alive, you can accomplish really anything you want to. Now, will I ever be an NBA basketball star? No, I will not. I had a funny conversation with Angel Pagan. Mm-hmm. And Angel Pagan is somebody who is a very, very famous ex-professional baseball player. And we occasionally work out with him at our gym back in Puerto Rico. Very, very sweet, wonderful, incredible guy. And anyway, so he was having he was doing this crazy ass, I don't even know what it was, ninja thing.
It works out like nothing that we've ever seen before.
Yeah, and I'm like, there's no way
And this is after he's retired.
Now, I made the mistake of saying there's no way I could do that. Oh my God. He lit me up with a mindset fire hose like you can't possibly believe. And he said, you could do, basically all the, Anthony Robbins type stuff, which was great, because he truly believes it and has lived it.
Yeah.
And I thought, then I said to him, so I could be a professional baseball star like you? And he just looked at me and laughed.
But you can work out like one, maybe.
Yeah, you can work out with one.
With one.
Which is
Exactly.
what I settled for.
Yeah.
So guys,
pretty
listen.
amazing.
Hopefully this information is going to help you be in alignment with who you truly can be as a real estate practitioner. And here's an extra little bonus point for all of you. If you want ever increasing levels of success in your business and personal life, if you want to, you're going to always feel like you're burning it at both ends sometimes. Go back and use some of the basic ideas that we gave you at the top of this podcast. But the way you get the most levels of success for the longest period of time is being in alignment with your true spiritual self. And I'm not being woo-woo here. I'm just being what I feel to be factual. And knowing that your highest and truest purpose on this planet is to be of service to other people. Being of service to other people, not just focusing on yourself. Not just focusing on how you feel, not just focusing on your opinion. Being of service to other people as a real estate practitioner means you're helping to solve other people's problems, which is buying and selling real estate in a manner in which is going to cause them the least amount of stress. That is really you being a true professional. And any and every professional knows that, especially the top performers.
That's right. Time to get to work. We'll see you on the next show.
Hello, thank you for having watched this video. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
That's right. And don't forget to hit that like button, leave your comments and questions below, and we will get right back with you.
Thank you for watching this video. And remember to watch the next one. You're going to love that one.